Introduction of Economy. Economist is the study of how goods and services are produced, distributed, and consumed. As resources are always in short supply, the British economist Leon Robbins in 1935 described the discipline as a science of scarcity. These are economics, the discipline, the organizing an economy, role of state in the economy, sector of the economy, types of the economies, idea of the national income, uniqueness of the Indian economy.
The study of every discipline starts with the process of defining it.
Economics, the discipline. A working definition whist.
It is essential to seize the subject one intends to study. The fundamental way of doing this is starting with the definition of the subject. But the definition, at times or
Say more. Of
economy.
economy. Economics, the discipline. Working definition with one economics is the study
of how
economics, the discipline. A working definition whist. It is essential to the study of every discipline starts with the process of defining it.
Economics is no exception to this. But
the challenge of
articulating an overarching definition of any discipline has never been an easy task, and at the end one has to be satisfied with the partial definition. Different economists have seen the discipline with differing perspectives and have been coming up with differing definitions. At times a large number of such definitions became either narrow or incomprehensible. But it is quite necessary to come out with the working definition of the subject one intends to study. Before coming out with our own working definition of the subject, we may cite here two highly acclaimed and internationally established attempts in this direction. One, economics is the study of how societies use scarce resources to produce valuable commodities and distribute them among different people. One, as per the definition, there are two key ideas in economics: that goods are scarce and that society must use its resources efficiently. Indeed, economics is an important subject because of the fact of scarcity and the desire for efficiency. Over the last half-century, the study of economics has included such varied topics that the subject serves different purposes to different students of economics. Some study it to make money. Basically, most of its students in the developed world do study economics to enrich themselves. But the same is not correct in the case of the developing world. The truth is that here economics has only been read and taught, not applied, if we do a sweeping generalization. Others study economics to know about poverty, unemployment, human development, shares and debentures, banking norms, prices and their movements, e-commerce, etc. Still others might be studying the discipline to enhance their knowledge of economics. Two, economics studies how individuals, firms, government, and other organizations within our society make choices and how these choices determine society's use of its resources. 1b, human life depends on consumption of various materials which are made up of the resources available on earth. As there is no limit to human wants, we need infinite resources to gratify our needs and wants. But the resources are limited. Now it is up to the individual and humanity at large as to how they try to satisfy their competing needs to get fulfilled by the limited resources. It means we need to make for some choices before we utilize the scarce resources by prioritizing some of our needs. In this process, some needs might never get fulfilled. At the same time, there might be some needs which may be fulfilled again and again with the available resources. Economics is the discipline which studies how the individual, a society, a government is making their prioritized choices in the process of using the scarce resources to gratify the various needs and wants of life. Making such choices is an art as well as a science. As time changes, the choices change. As space changes, human needs change and so modify the choices. After studying and surveying the various choices made by humanity at large in differing time and space, they developed the discipline of economics. As economics is an exercise in the space-time continuum and it deals with living human beings, it is a very dynamic subject and should only be read in this perspective to have the real feel. WIST, TR economics, the discipline. A working definition WIST. TR is essential to feel the subject one intends to study. The fundamental way of doing this is starting with the definition of the subject. But the definition, at times or better say most of the times, becomes very abstract, jargon-laden and technical. Such a definition might not give a proper feel and understanding of the subject to a person who does not belong to economics. Most of the students of economics face difficulty in making out a complete meaning of the definition. That is why a very general and layman's definition is needed. Human beings in their day-to-day lives are busy doing so many things. There are different activities we are involved in throughout our lives. These activities fall under different categories. Economics studies the economic activities of mankind. Similarly, political, social and administrative activities of mankind are studied by political science, sociology and public administration, respectively. That is why these disciplines are broadly categorized as humanities, as all of them study human activities. There are many more specialized human activities which are studied under many more disciplines. Which activities of mankind are the economic activities? The activities which involve profit, loss, livelihood, occupation, wage, employment, etc. all are economic activities. Economics studies all these activities. Today, economics has many branches and studies highly diverse subject matters right at the global, macro and micro levels. Why some people go for fuel-efficient cars while others go for fuel-guzzling sports cars? Why the poor are poor? Is capitalism doomed to intensify economic inequality? Will the process of globalization be able to bridge the poor-rich divide and have a universal homogenizing impact on the world? Such varied and many more questions fall under the domain of economics. These days we also can see information technology giving a typically new dimension to economics. Economics and economy, the relation between economics and the economy, simply saying, is that of theory and practice. While the former is a discipline studying economic behavior of human beings, the latter is a still frame picture of it. Economics will come out with theories of market, employment, etc., and an economy is the real picture of the things which emerge after the follow-up to the same theories in certain areas. Economy is economics at play in a certain region. This region is best defined today as a country, a nation, the Indian economy, the Russian economy, the French economy, etc. Economy as such means nothing. It gets meaning once it is preceded by the name of a country, a region, a bloc, etc. When we say developed economies, we mean economies of the developed countries. Countries of the world might be facing some common economic challenges. At the same time, they might be facing some highly specific challenges. Economists, during the period of evolution of economics, have suggested some fixed number of theories and methods of solving those economic challenges. Now it depends upon the choice of the countries as to which set of principles and theories they select for solving their economic challenges. Now many countries selecting same remedy and tools to fight the same problems might have similar or dissimilar results during a given period. At the same time, two economies selecting different tools to solve the same economic problems might experience the same results or completely different results. Why this we choose send S, O W, www.easyengineering.net. Basically, economic theories are expect VITSI2, NWSWWO.FEHA in Nibiria NHG.NA we share about their economic activities, and as human behavior depends greatly on many internal and external factors, the results are likely to show diversities. The level and quality of natural resources, the quantity and quality of human resources, the socio-political milieu, the historical background, the psychic make of the human resource, etc. are some of the factors which individually as well as collectively impact an economy while carrying out economic activities. These things make it highly difficult for economists to say and forecast the kind of impact a particular economic policy will have on a particular economic setting. Ultimately, implementation and delivery system all play a highly vital role in solving economic challenges in a country, which economists started studying after the 1960s. Therefore, it is correct to say that economics has less diversity than the economies. There will not be any exaggeration if we say that no two economies of the world are exactly the same, though we might classify them into broader terms like developed and developing, agrarian and industrial, etc. This diversity makes economics a highly interesting discipline. And via the diverse faces of the economies, the economists have been able to modify and remodify their ideas on the subject of economics. The evolutionary history of economics is nothing but modifications in the past theories on the basis of contemporary results and experiences of the economies. It is right to say that economics has developed out of real-life practices, and it is from the practice to theory. As the practices will be having newer dimensions, the theories of economics will also have newer and more imaginative dimensions. Focus of economics: what is the real purpose that economics has been trying to serve? What ultimately economists have been trying to articulate? And what has been the focus of economics and the economists since the birth of the discipline? Though economics today studies a wide range of issues and topics, if we take an overall picture, its essence has been very simple: the betterment of human life on earth. Improving living conditions of the humanity at large has been the real and the ultimate goal of the discipline. In this process, the economists have been articulating a number of theories and propositions as to how an economy may maximize its economic potential and worth. The first and the most famous work in this direction was by the Scottish philosopher-economist, Adam Smith, in The Wealth of Nations, 1776. We trace the origin of the classical school to this work. Similarly, in the following years and centuries many masterpieces were produced by a great many economists who were trying to improvise better ways of maximizing the fruits of economic activities. Economics and the economists have common goals: searching for possible alternatives for the betterment of human life. Challenge of the economies: the main challenge of any economy is to fulfill the needs of its population. Every population needs to be supplied some goods and services for its survival and well-being. These goods might include basic needs such as food, shelter, garments, etc., while it might also consist of refrigerators, air conditioners, cars, medicines, computers, etc. Similarly, the services people need may range from healthcare, drinking water supply, education to advanced and highly sophisticated services like
organizing an economy banking, insurance,
airways,
telephone versus his T.
IWNWTWR.NASYTE, NGE@NCE.RENAG.S. Nathan economy moves on the ladder of development. The process of fulfilling the needs of the population becomes a never-ending phenomenon. As an economy achieves success in supplying one set of goods and services to its population, the population starts demanding another set of goods and services which are of a higher order. And thus goes on the struggle of the economy, solving one challenge and focusing on another. Standard of living of one set of population varies from another depending upon the attempts and the successes of the concerned economies as to which comparative extent they have been able to fulfill the needs of their population. There are two aspects of this challenge. First, the availability of the goods and services required by the population, and second, the presence of the supply network. Every economy has to guarantee required level of goods and services out of its production process at first. For this, proper level of production capacity is built up, which requires a particular level of capital formation or investment. From where the investable funds will be managed is altogether a separate question. Whether the investment will come from the government, the domestic private sector or the foreigners. Once these details are cleared and selected as per the socio-economic conditions of the economy, a proper distribution network for the goods and services produced is assured. Distribution network models. In the arena of distribution network, we have three historically existing models: state, market and state market mix. In the first kind of distribution system, the state, i.e. the government, takes the sole responsibility of supplying the goods and services required by the population with no payments being done by the consumer, the former Soviet Union and Communist China being the best examples. In the second categories comes the market mode of distribution, which functions on the basis of price mechanism. In this system, goods and services are made available in the market, and on the basis of their demand and supply, their prices are determined in the open market, and finally they get distributed to the population. This was the distribution system of the capitalist economies, the whole Euro-America till 1930s. The third and the most prevalent mode of distribution developed out of the experiences of the former two systems is the state market mix. This distribution system has certain goods and services which might be made available to the population freely or at the subsidized prices by the state, and some might be supplied by the market for which consumers need to pay. Almost all economies of the world today follow one or the other kinds of distribution system. As the socio-economic composition of the population of an economy changes, the mixture of the goods and services to be supplied by the state and the market gets redefined in the economies from time to time. Any one issue which has affected civilized history of mankind the most and has been a contentious issue is as to how the production process in an economy should be organized. Whether the production should be the sole responsibility of the state government or should it be left altogether to the private sector. Again, will it be better to carry on production with a joint effort, a mixture of state and private enterprises? Depending upon the dominant view of TVHI sent, TWMWWE.ENCRENPGANERITRIINGU.N la etter country, different forms of production patterns evolved and different economic systems finally came up, providing alternative ways of organizing an economy. The three models of economic systems which we see coming up are basically the different stages in the evolutionary process of our experiments which define a better way of organizing our economy. We must have a concise overview of this evolutionary process. 1. Capitalistic economy. The capitalistic form of economy has its origin in the famous work of Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, 1776. Adam Smith, 1723-1790, the Scottish philosopher, economist, professor at Glasgow University, whose writings formed the basis of classical economics, had stressed certain fine ideas which were to take fancy among some of the Western countries, and finally capitalism took birth. He raised his voice against the heavy-handed government regulation of commerce and industry of the time, which did not allow the economy to tap its full economic worth and reach the level of well-being. Stressing division of labor, and environment of laissez-faire, non-interference by the government, he proposed that the invisible hand of the market forces, price mechanism, will bring a state of equilibrium to the economy and a general well-being to the countrymen. For such an economy to function for public well-being, he has acknowledged the need of competition in the market. Once the USA attained independence, the ideas of Adam Smith were made part of its public policy just 1 year after Wealth of Nations was published. From here the idea spread to other parts of Euro-America. By 1800 the economic system, capitalism, was established, which was later known by different names: private enterprise system, free enterprise system, market economy. The decisions of what to produce, how much to produce and at what price to sell are taken by the market, by the private enterprises in this system, with the state having no economic role. Two-state economy rooted in the ideas of historical change proposed by the German philosopher Karl Marx, 1883. More specifically, this kind of economic system first came up in the erstwhile USSR after the Bolshevik Revolution, 1917, and got its ideal shape in the People's Republic of China, 1949. This form of economic system also spread to other countries in Eastern Europe. Here we see two versions of the state economy, in erstwhile USSR known as the Socialist Economy and in pre-1985 China as the Communist Economy. While Socialistic Economy emphasized the collective ownership of the means of production, property and assets, and it also ascribed a large role to the state in running the economy, Communist Economy advocated state ownership of all properties including even labor and absolute power to state in running the economy. Though for Marx, socialism was a transitional stage to communism, it never did happen in reality. Basically, this form of economy came in reaction to the prevalent popular economic system of capitalism and proposed just the opposite. The decisions related to production, supply and prices were all suggested to be taken by the state only. Such economies were also known as centralized economy, centrally planned economy, non-market economy. The socialist and communist economies used to criticize capitalistic economics of being based on
exploitation.
In response, the Capitalistic Economy.EIAS's Yendra in Lele Inc.NHETM the practitioners of state capitalism, where the states were the sole exploitators. The communist and anti-communist propagandas resulted in serious intellectual discussions almost up to mid-1980s. Free mixed economy, the belief in the self-correcting quality of the market and the invisible hand of Adam Smith got a major setback in early 20th century during the Great Depression, 1929. The impact of the Depression spread from the USA to the other economies of Western Europe, escalating large-scale unemployment, downfall in demand and economic activities, and lockouts in industrial enterprises. The prevailing Smithsonian macro ideas failed to check the crisis. A new approach was needed, which came in the famous work, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, 1936, by the English economist at Cambridge University, John Maynard Keynes, 1883196. Keynes questioned the very principles of laissez-faire and the nature of the invisible hand. He even opined that the invisible hand brings equilibrium to the economy, but by strangulating the poor. He suggested that prices and wages of the labor are not flexible enough to provide employment to all. It means there will be some people unemployed when the economy will be at its full potential. Ultimately, a fall in demand will be imminent, resulting in recession and, if unchecked, in depression, which happened in 1929. Questioning the limitations of the market mechanism, Keynes suggested strong government intervention in the economy. To get the economy out of the depression, he suggested an increase in the government expenditures, discretionary fiscal policy, fiscal deficit, lower interest rates, cheap money supply, etc., to boost the demand of goods and services, as this was the reason behind the depression. As Keynesian policies were followed, the concerned economies were successfully pulled out of the Great Depression. While Keynes was inquiring into the causes and cures of the Great Depression, he questioned the capitalist economic system being practiced throughout Euro-America. He suggested the capitalistic order to assimilate the goals of the socialistic economy, economic ideals of the socialists, i.e. the ex-USSR. In the capitalist economies of the time, All the basic goods and services were part of the market mechanism, i.e. being produced and supplied by the private sector. It meant that almost everything the people required was supplied by the private enterprises via the market, which was ultimately an undimensional movement of money and wealth, from the mass of people to the few who controlled the production and supply chain, and the masses were going through the process of pauperization every day, thereby weakening their purchasing power. In the end, it affected overall demand and culminated in the Great Depression. As a follow-up to the Keynesian advices, many trend-setting economic policies were initiated throughout the capitalist economies. One very important initiative which came out was the government's active role in the economy. The governments started producing and supplying some basic goods and services which are known as public goods. These goods basically intended to guarantee minimum level of nutrition to all, healthcare, sanitation, education, social security, etc. The expenditure on the public goods were incurred on the public exchequer even if it required deficit financing. Starting from 1930s up to 1950s, almost 50% of the GDP in the Euro-America was spent by the governments on the public goods, which also become popular as the social sector. The essential goods and services which were till date being purchased by the people as private goods were soon made available by the standardized FWREW.OEFSYCONGS people more spare money to create demand for the goods and services which were part of the market. The above instance has been cited here to just show the process as to how capitalism redefined itself by including some useful traits of the non-market economy, i.e. the state economy. The mixed economy arrived in this way and the classical capitalistic economy was challenged by it. On the margins of the developments given above, it is interesting to note the developments in the state economies of the time. It was Professor Oskar Lange, 1904-65, the Polish philosopher, who in 1950s suggested the same thing for the socialist economy as Keynes had for the capitalist. Professor Lange praised the state economy for many of its good things but also suggested inclusion of some of the good things of the capitalistic economy too. He advised the state economies to adopt market socialism, the term was coined by him. His suggestions were outrightly rejected by the state economies as such compromises in socialistic economic order were blasphemous at that time. This was ultimately a suggestion towards democracy from dictatorship. A.S. Keynes has suggested the capitalist economy to move few steps towards socialistic economy. Professor Lange was asking just the same in the case of the state economies. Democracies are flexible, thus they were able to go for an experiment which paid them in coming times. But as the socialist and communist political systems had been stubborn by nature, they did not go for any experiment and thus started moving towards their economic decay. It was the communist China under the leadership of Mao Tse-tung where the first opinion came against the total state economic control. And the ultimate example of the state economy, i.e., China, started its preparation towards a limited market economy under the political design of dictatorship. In 1985, China announced its open door policy, the first experiment in market socialism. Professor Lange had the last laugh. Other state economies, though caught unprepared, followed the Chinese experiment towards market socialism. However, switch over to market socialism has not been smooth for most of the state economies. The efforts towards market socialism in the Soviet Union, fueled by the lofty ideas of glasnost, openness, and pre-structure, restructuring, resulted in the very disintegration of the nation-state. The experts consider it a political fallout of an economic mismanagement. The other state economies experienced major economic breakdowns in their transition phases to market socialism. Basically, for smooth transition to market socialism, some prerequisites were required to be put in place beforehand. China was well ahead doing this homework since Mao's time, especially since 1975 onwards, which emerged as a real winner, the ideal type example of state economy getting smoothly metamorphosed into giant market economy. These two events spanning many decades were nothing but timely and rational selections of economic traits from each other's economic systems and experiences. The world by the late 1980s was having neither a pure example of capitalistic economy nor a pure example of state economy. There were many states of the world that opted for mixed economy in the post-Second World War periods after coming out of the colonial rule, such as India, Malaysia, Indonesia, etc., to name a few. The leadership of these countries could be considered visionaries, which was to be proved by mid-1990. Though at practical levels, the world looked flat for the mixed economy, a formal opinion on the goodness, immediacy and the ultimate viability of the mixed economy was yet to emerge. The first such authoritative opinion, in this direction, came from the World Bank, which accepted the goodness
and the need
of
of state intervention.
intervention.
It has realized
WNW.em ACY3ANGT it's a turning point in the world economic thinking as the World Bank, WB, and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, were the ardent votaries of the virtues of the free market economy. The concluding consensus emerged with the publication of the World Development Report, 1999, titled Entering the 21st Century, in which the WB said, governments play a vital role in development, but there is no simple set of rules that tells them what to do. The WB went on to suggest in this important document that every country should determine the areas and the extent of the market and the state intervention depending upon its own stage of economic development, socio-political and other historical factors. The last WB document had basically rejected both of the historically existing economic orders, namely the free market economy and the state economy, which meant Adam Smith and Karl Marx were cancelled and rejected outrightly, that too on the basis of the historical experiences of both the worlds. Rather, the document advocates for the mixture of both the economic orders, i.e. the mixed economy. The long-standing ideological dilemma as to whether the market economy or the state economy was the better or the best way of organizing the economy was solved for all time to come. The document pinpointed good things of both the systems and concluded that they don't have the relationship of dichotomy but that of complementarity. The real issue is not whether to have market or the state, but having both of them together makes more sense. Market economy might suit one economy while it might not suit another, due to the different socio-economic conditions of the economies in reference. Similarly, the state economy model might serve one economy but might not serve the other. The real answer seems going for neither market or state but a judicious combination of both. As the state market mix depends upon the socio-economic and political conditions of an economy, there can never be a mechanical prototype of the mixed economy which could be applied upon every economy universally. Every economy needs to explore its own mixture of market and state. Again, the same state might need to redefine composition of the state market mix in the coming times according to its changed socio-eco-political scenario. The process of economic reforms in India started in 1991. It was in fact the search for a new state market mix, while India had been a mixed economy since independence. After independence, India opted for the mixed economy when the state market dilemma was at its peak in the world. In the process of organizing the economy, some basic and important infrastructural economic responsibilities were taken up by the state governments, center and state, and rest of the economic activities were left to private enterprise, i.e. the market. The kind of state market mix for which India went was thought to be fit for the socio-economic and political conditions of the time. Once the country started the process of economic reforms in early 1990s, the prevailing state market mix was redefined and a new form of mixed economy began to be practiced. As the socio-economic conditions had changed, the state market mix also changed. The redefined mixed economy for India had a declared favor for the market economy. Many economic roles which were under complete government monopolies were now opened for participation by the private sector. Examples are many: telecommunication, power, roads, oil and natural gas, etc. At the same time, The responsibilities which were till date being shouldered by the state alone and which could be taken up by the state only were given extra emphasis. In this category comes the whole social sector: education, healthcare, drinking water, sanitation, nutrition, social security, etc.
The economic system of India was a mixed PST, WECOWN.ERSGANG in NEPRRNG.N1 1991 years as it is in post 1991 years, but the composition of state market mix has gone for a change. In future, as the socio-economic and political factors will be changing, India will be redefining its mixed economy accordingly. The emergence and evolution of the mixed economy was thus able to settle the long-standing debate as to what was the best way to organize an economy. Starting in 1776 with the Wealth of Nations of Adam Smith, it continued till we had the World Development Report of 1999 by the WB4. The dilemma continued for almost 2¼ centuries, 1776-2000. Today, once the World Trade Organization, WTO, has taken over the world economy, the brand of the mixed economy it advocates is more inclined towards the free market economy. But it does not propagate to make the state an economic non-entity, i.e., it leaves scope for greater state intervention in the required areas if need be. Role of state in an economy: the dilemma of searching the ideal way of organizing an economy, as it evolved, was also going to solve another riddle. This riddle was the role of the state in an economy. 5 If we look back into the economic history of the world, we see 3 possible roles for the state government in the economy: I, as a regulator of the economic system, where the state takes important economic decisions, announces the required kind of economic policies, takes the sole responsibility to get them implemented, and controlling and punishing those who don't oblige to those economic decisions. 2. As a producer and or supplier of the private goods and services. These include all those goods and services which constitute the part of market and which will be distributed among the needy according to the principles of the market mechanism. Here the state earns profit as a private enterprise. 3. As a producer and or supplier of the public goods or the social goods. These include the goods and services which look essential from the social justice and well-being perspective for the people. Education, healthcare, sanitation, drinking water, nutrition, caring for the handicapped and old, etc. come under this category. These goods, which are generally distributed free of cost, at times might reach the beneficiaries at the subsidized prices. The loss incurred by the state in this way is paid out of the public exchequer, which means that the whole economy pays for the cause of a few people. As different economies selected different roles for the state according to their socio-political ideologies, the world had differing ways of organizing the economy and had resulted in the different economic systems in the past. On the issue of regulating the economy there has been no debate, as we see all economic systems being regulated by the state only. But the selection of other 2 functions of the state in an economy made the real difference. The economy which selected both the roles, 2 and 3, for the state under monopoly, we called them the state economies. This category of economy had 2 variants in the socialist economy: at least the labor was not owned and exploited by the state, unlike the other, the communist economy, where labor used to be under complete state control. These economies had almost no market. Waste.
The economic system which left both the roles, 2 and 3, as the sole responsibilities of the private sector was called the capitalistic economic system. Here the state had almost no economic role but played a passive role of the regulator.
Mixed economies
had at least kept one economic role fixed for them, i.e. 3, while they played the sole role of supplying public goods to the needy people. In some of the mixed economies the state went on to take some of the roles of supplying the private goods, i.e. 2, even by carrying heavy burdens of subsidies. The WB document, the WDR, 1999 was a judgment on the possible and the suitable roles of state in the economy, which suggested a timely shuffling of state's role in the economy as per the socio-economic and political needs of the economy.
we may understand the moot question why a teens for whom the political problem of mankind is to combine three things: I. Economic efficiency, 2. Social justice, and 3. Individual liberty. In the process of realizing the above-mentioned three objectives, an economy cannot go for either allowing only state's role in the economy or only the market's role in the economy. These challenges could only be faced properly once the state and the market both are given a balanced role in an economy, the balance to be defined by its present conditions and the direction of the future desire of the economy. Striking the right balance between the roles of the state and market in the economies came to be known as the process of economic reforms in the post-WTO world. If we analyze the need of an economy, we see some compulsory roles for the state in it, i.e., if the regulation and control of an economy is left to the private individual or group, i.e. firms, they will be using the regulatory powers to maximize their profits and returns at the cost of others. That is why this role must rest with the state. It looks more logical in the democratic political setups, wherein the interest of the largest numbers is being represented in the regulatory provisions. 2. The responsibility of producing and distributing private goods to the people could be well handled by the private sector, as this is a profit-fetching area. The state should not burden itself with this responsibility, as this could be well taken up by the private sector. But in the absence of the proper presence of the private sector in an economy, many countries in the world gave this responsibility also to the state, India being one among them. But as the private sector became capable, in some countries this responsibility was given up by the state in favor of the private sector, and better development has been possible in those economies. In this sense, India delayed this process, while in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand and South Korea the state did give up this responsibility, allowing the entry of the private sector. 3. The responsibility of producing and supplying the social public goods to the needy people cannot be left to the private sector, as this is a lot-making role. It means, the state will have to take the sole responsibility or may need to expand its role in such areas, as we see in the post-reforms India. As the private sector becomes capable of playing the proper role in producing and supplying the
sectors of an economy, types of
economies, private goods, state saves its important VHSUT, MWNW.EAN/SYDNGC INO care of the public goods production and distribution. Resources which is transferred to take basically, the WB study, the East Asian Miracle, 1993, recognizes the above given shift of one kind of mixed economy to the another kind of mixed economy, in the case of the Malaysian, Thai and South Korean economies, taking place since the mid-1960s. Experts believe that this shift could not take place in time in India. And once it started, 1992, it was too late, and this choice was not voluntary but obligatory. The East Asian economies had gone for the same kind of reform process, but by their choice. Every economy tries to maximize the returns of economic activities in which it is involved. Whatever be the organizing principles of an economy, the economic activities are broadly classified into three broad categories, which are known as the three sectors 6 of the economy. I. Primary sector. This sector includes all those economic activities where there is the direct use of natural resources as agriculture, forestry, fishing, fuels, metals, minerals, etc. In some of the economies, mining activities are considered a part of secondary sector, though we see direct use of natural resources here. Broadly, such economies term their agricultural sector as the primary sector. This is the case in India. I. Secondary sector. This sector is rightly called the manufacturing sector, which uses the produce of the primary sector as its raw materials. Since the manufacturing is done by the industries, this sector is also called the industrial sector. Bread and biscuits, cakes, automobiles, textiles, etc. II. Tertiary sector. This sector includes all those economic activities where different services are produced, such as education, banking, insurance, transportation, tourism, etc. This sector is also known as the service sector. depending upon the shares of the particular sectors in the total production of an economy and the ratio of the dependent population on them for their livelihood. Economies are given different names, such as agrarian economy.
Idea of national income and economy
is called agrarian if the SH were SRTE. Go wfw.ita.ssypernegmne.sna hectare is 50% or more in the total output, the GDP, of the economy. At the time of independence, India was such an economy. But now it shows the typical symptom of a service economy with primary sector's contribution falling to almost 18% of its total produce while almost 60% of its population depends on the primary sector for its livelihood. Thus, in monetary terms India is no more an agrarian economy. The dependency ratio makes it so, India being the first such example in the economic history of the world. Industrial economy if the secondary sector contributes 50% or more to the total produce value of an economy, it is an industrial economy. Higher the contribution, higher is the level of industrialization. The Western economies who went for early industrialization earning faster and enough income and developing early were known as developed economies. Most of these economies have crossed this phase once the process of industrialization saturated. Service economy the economy whose 50% or more produce value comes from the tertiary sector is known as the service economy. First lot of such economies in the world were the early industrialized economies. The tertiary sector provides livelihood to the largest number of people in such economies. In the last decade, April 2003 to 2012 to 13, growth has increasingly come from the services sector *, whose contribution to overall growth of the economy has been 65%, while that of the industry and agriculture sectors has been 27% and 8% respectively. By the end of the 19th century it was a well-established fact, at least in the Western world, that industrial activities were a faster way to earn income in comparison to agrarian activities. The Second World War had established the fact for the whole world, and almost every country started their preparation for the process of industrialization. As country after country successfully industrialized, a pattern of the population shift from one to another sector was established, which was known as the stages of growth of an economy. 7 With the intensification of industrialization, dependency on primary sector for livelihood decreased and dependency on secondary sector increased consistently. Similarly, such economies saw a population shift from the secondary to the tertiary sector, and these were known as the post-industrial societies or the service societies. Almost the whole Euro-America falls under this category. These economies are having over 50% of their total produce value being contributed by their tertiary sectors, and over half of the population depends on the sector for their livelihood. Many other countries which started industrialization in the post-war period did show aberrations in this shift of the population and the income, India being one among them. Income is probably the most frequently used term of economics, used by experts and lay masses.
Income level is the most
commonly used www.easytnrgminingh.well-being and happiness of the nations and their citizens. This remains true today also, even if we know that income is not an exhaustive idea to know about the well-being of the society. There has been some reason for such a perception about the concept of income. Basically, when the idea of human development came into being by early 1990s, the concept of the Human Development Index ultimately was heavily dependent on the level of income of individual in a country. Education and life expectancy can only be enhanced once the required amount of investment, expenditure on them, could be mobilized. Thus, somehow, income came to be established as the focal point of human development. As income of a single person can be measured, it can be measured for a nation and the whole world, although the method of calculating may be a little bit complex in the latter's case. In due course of time, 4 ideas ways to calculate the income of a nation it developed, which are the subject matter of the national income accounting, an area to which the disciplines commerce and statistics are closer. These 4 ways to look upon income of an economy, although different from each other in some way, are the concepts of GDP, NDP, GNP and NNP. All are a form of the national income, but are different from one another. They all say a different story about the income of a nation in their own specific way. Here, we discuss them in a very objective way. GDP, gross domestic product, GDP, is the value of the all final goods and services produced within the boundary of a nation during 1 year. For India, this calendar year is from 1st April to 31st March. It will be better to understand the terms used in the concept. Gross means same thing to economics and commerce as total means to mathematics. Domestic means all the economic activities done inside the boundary of the nation country and by its own capital. Product is word to define goods and services together, and final means the stage of a product after which there is no known chance of value addition in it. The different uses of the concept GDP are as given below. I, per annum percentage change in it is the growth rate of an economy. For example, if a country has a GDP of 107 rupees, which is 7 rupees higher than the last year, it has a growth rate of 7%. When we use the term a growing economy, it means that the economy is adding up its income in quantitative terms. 2. It is a quantitative concept and its volume size indicates the internal strength of the economy. But it does not say anything about the qualitative aspects of the produced goods and services by the economy. 3. It is used by the IMF in the cooperative analysis of its member nations. NDP, net domestic product, NDP, is the GDP calculated after adjusting the weight of the value of depreciation. This is basically net form of the GDP, i.e. GDP minus the total value of the wear and tear, depreciation, that happened in the assets while the goods and services were being produced. Every asset, except human beings, go for depreciation in the process of their uses, which means they wear and tear. The governments of the economies DV, AXKI, DWFA.N EDASIA and NGN in OEU earn in CGE net the rates by
which assets depreciate.
Done in India with T.
YWFE.EMSY
in NGI is NATIA array Ingo.NFIT commerce and industry, and a list is published, which is used by the different sections of the economy to determine the real levels of depreciations in different assets. For example, a residential house in India has a rate of 1% per annum depreciation, an electric fan has 10% per annum, etc., calculated in terms of the asset's price. This is one way how depreciation is used in economics. The other way it is used in the external sector while the domestic currency floats freely in front of the foreign currencies. If the value of the domestic currency falls following market mechanism in front of a foreign currency, it is the situation of depreciation in the domestic currency, calculated in terms of loss in value of the domestic currency. Thus, NDP is equal to GDP depreciation. This way, NDP of an economy has to be always lower than its GDP for the same year, since there is no way to cut the depreciation to zero. But mankind has achieved too much in this area by the developments such as ball bearing, lubricants, etc., all innovated to minimize the levels of depreciation. The different uses of the concept of NDP are as given below. A. For domestic use only to understand the historical situation of the loss due to depreciation to the economy. Also used to understand and analyze the sectoral situation of depreciation in industry and trade in comparative periods. B. To show the achievements of the economy in the area of research and development which have tried cutting the levels of depreciation in a historical time period. However, NDP is not used in comparative economics, i.e., to compare the economies of the world. Why this is so? This is due to different rates of depreciation which is set by the different economies of the world. rates of depreciation may be based on logic, as it is in the case of houses in India. The cement, bricks, sand and iron rods which are used to build houses in India can sustain it for the coming 100 years. Thus the rate of depreciation is fixed at 1% per annum. But it may not be based on logic all the time. For example, up to February 2000 the rate of depreciation for the heavy vehicles with 6 wheels and above, was 20%, while it was done 40% afterwards, to boost the sales of the vehicles. There was no logic in doubling the rate. Basically, depreciation and its rates are used by the modern governments as a tool of economic policy making also, which is the third way how depreciation is used in economics. GNP, gross national product, GNP, is the GDP of a country added with its income from abroad. Here, the transboundary economic activities of an economy is also taken into account. The items which are counted in the segment, income from abroad, are I. Trade balance. The net outcome at the year end of the total exports and imports of a country may be positive or negative accordingly added with the GDP. In India's case it has always been negative except the 3 consecutive years March 2000 when it was positive, due to high levels of services sector export during the years courtesy the booming BPO industry. 2. Interest of external loans. The net outcome on the front of the interest payments, i.e. balance of the inflow on the money lent out by the economy, and the outflow on the money borrowed
by the economy. Of the external six is a TT,
GS.net TS. It has been always negative as the economy has been a net borrower from the world economies. 3. Private remittances. The net outcome of the money which inflows and outflows on account of the private transfers by the Indian nationals working outside India to India, and the foreign nationals working in India to their home countries. On this front India has been always a gainer till early 1990s from the Gulf region, which fell down afterwards in the wake of the heavy country-bound movements of the Indians working there due to the Gulf War, and afterwards from the USA and the European nations. Basically, during the year 2012, India is projected, as per the IMF, to be the highest receiver of this fund to the tune of $58 billion. It was the second highest in 2011 at $55 billion. China was the top gainer with $57 billion. Ultimately, the balance of all the 3 components of the income from abroad segment may turn out to be positive or negative. In India's case it has been always negative, due to heavy outflows on account of trade deficits and interest payments of the foreign loans. It means, the income from abroad is subtracted from India's GDP to calculate its GNP. The normal formula is GNP is equal to GDP plus income from abroad. But it becomes GNP is equal to GDP plus income from abroad is equal to GDP income from abroad, in the case of India. This means that India's GNP is always lower than its GDP. The different uses of the concept GNP are as given below. A. This is the national income, according to which the IMF ranks the nations of the world in terms of the volumes at the purchasing power parity, at PPP. For detailed discussion on the PPP, readers may search for it alphabetically in the chapter 24. India is ranked as the 4th largest economy of the world, after the USA, Japan and China, while as per the nominal prevailing exchange rate of rupee India is the 13th largest economy. B. It is the more exhaustive concept of national income than the GDP, as it indicates about the quantitative, as well as the qualitative, aspect of the economy, i.e., the internal, as well as the external, strength of the economy. C. It enables us to learn several facts about the production behavior and pattern of an economy, such as how much the outside world is dependent on its product and how much it depends on the world for the same, numerically shown by the size and net flow of its trade balance, what is the standard of its human resource in international parlance, shown by the size and the net flow of its private remittances, what position it holds regarding financial support from and to the world. Economies, shown by the net flow of interests on external lending borrowing. NNP, net national product, NNP, of an economy is the GNP after deducting the loss due to depreciation. The formula to derive it may be written like NNP is equal to GNP depreciation, or NNP is equal to GDP plus income from abroad depreciation.
The different uses of the concept
NNP in AIST, WSWWD.EVASYN ENBG net, A. This is the national income, NI, of an economy. Though the GDP, NDP and GNP, all are national income, they are not written with capitalized N and I. B. This is the purest form of the income of a nation. C. When we divide NNP by the total population of nation, we get the per capita income, PCI, of that nation, i.e., income per head per year. A very basic point should be noted here, that this is the point where the rates of depreciation followed by the different nations make a difference. Higher the rates of depreciation, lower the PCI of the nation, whatever be the reason for it, logical or artificial, as in the case of depreciation being used as a tool of policy making. Though economies are free to fix any rate of depreciation for the different assets, the rates fixed by them make difference when the NI of the nations are compared by the international financial institutions like the IMF, WB, ADB, etc. Cost and price of national income. While calculating national income, the issues related to cost and price also needs to be decided. Basically, there are two sets of costs and prices, and an economy needs to choose at which of the two costs and two prices it will calculate its national income. Let us understand the confusion and the relevance of this confusion. 9. I. Cost, income of an economy, i.e. value of its total produced goods and services, may be calculated at either the factor cost or the market cost. What is the difference between them? Basically, factor cost is the input cost the producer has to incur in the process of producing something, such as cost of capital, i.e. interest on loans, raw materials, labor, rent, power, etc. This is also termed as factory price or production cost price. This is nothing but price of the commodity from the producer's side, while the market cost is derived after adding the indirect taxes to the factor cost of the product. It means the cost at which the goods reached the market, i.e. showrooms. These are the Senva, central excise, and the CST, which are paid by the producers to the central government in India. This is also known as the ex-factory price. The weight of the state taxes are then added to it, to finally derive the market cost. In general, they are called factor price and market price also. In India, income is calculated at factor cost, and so is the case with most of the developing countries, but among the developed economies it is calculated at the market cost. The reasons are lack of uniformity in taxes, goods are not printed with their prices, etc. In present time, we see a great degree of tax-related uniformity coming to India to the extent the central taxes are concerned, but the state taxes are still neither single nor uniform. Once the GST is implemented, this aberration will end. Though for statistical purposes, income at market cost is also released by the Central Statistical Organization, CSO. 2. Price, income can be derived at two prices, constant and current. The difference in the prices at constant and current prices is only that of the impact of inflation. Inflation is considered standstill at a year of past. This year of the past is also known as the base year, in the case of the constant price, while in the current price the present day inflation is added. Current price is, basically, the maximum retail price, MRP, which we see printed on the goods.
Selling in the market.
WIST. As per the new guidelines, the base year in India has been revised from the 1993 to 94 to May 2004. The data based on the new constant year is presently known as the new series of data, announced in September 2010. India calculates its national income at constant prices, so is the situation among the developing economies, while the developed nations calculate it at the current prices. Though, for the statistical purposes, the CSO releases the national income data at the current prices. 2. Why? Basically, inflation has been a challenging aspect of policy making in India because of its level, I range in which it dwindles, and stability, how stable it has been. In such situations, the growth
in
and
the
the
income
income
levels
levels
of
of
the
the
population.
population living below the poverty level, BPL, can never be measured accurately, because due to higher inflation the section will show higher income, and the government will never be able to measure the real impact of the poverty alleviation programs it runs for the population. Here, one important aspect of the income needs to be understood. Income of a person has three forms. The first form is nominal income, the wage someone gets in hand per day or per month. The second form is real income. This is nominal income minus the present day rate of inflation adjusted in percentage form. And the last one is the disposable income. The net part of wage one is free to use, which is derived after deducting the direct taxes from the real nominal income, depending upon the need of data. What happens in practice is that while the nominal income might have increased by only 5%, it looks 15% if the inflation is at the 10% level. Unlike India, among the developed nations, inflation has been around 2% for many decades. It means it has been at lower levels and stable, too. This is why the difference between the incomes at constant and current prices among them are narrow, and they calculate their national income at current prices. They get more reliable and realistic data of their income. The latest data of India's national income, as per the new Economic Survey 2012-13, is as given below. I national income, INNP, approximately 45 rupees and 72 paise lakh crores at constant prices and 73 rupees and 99 paise lakh crores at current prices. First revised estimates for the 2011-12. 2. Per capita income, PCI, approximately 38,037 rupees at constant prices and 61 rupees 564 at current prices. First revised estimates for the 2011-12. Taxes and national income. While accounting calculating national income, the taxes, direct taxes and indirect taxes collected by the governments, needs to be considered. In case of India, to the extent the direct taxes, individual income tax, corporate income tax, i.e. the corporate tax, dividend tax, interest tax, etc., are concerned, there is no need of adjustment whether the national income is accounted at factor cost or market cost. This is so because at both the costs, they have to be the same. Besides, these taxes are collected at the incomes of the concerned person or group. But the amount of indirect taxes, Senvak, customs, central sales tax, VAT, state excise, etc., needs to be taken care of if the national income is accounted at the factor cost, which is the case with India. If the national income is calculated at the factor cost, then the corpus of the total indirect taxes needs to be deducted from it. Why so? This is because they have been added twice, once in uniqueness of the Indian economy, the hands of the people group who pay VAT, MWW, WV.EECSRUNSGENTARANEG.NPEATY for it from their disposable income, while purchasing things, and other in the hands of the governments, as their income receipts. Collection source of the indirect taxes are the disposable income, which individuals and companies have with them after paying their direct taxes from which they do any purchasing, and finally, the indirect taxes reach the various governments. Thus, if the national income is calculated at the factor cost, the formula to seek it will be, national income at factor cost is equal to NNP at market cost indirect taxes. However, if the national income is being derived at the market cost, the indirect taxes do not need to be deducted from it. In this case, the governments need not add their income accruing from indirect taxes to the national income either. It means, that the confusion in the case of national income accounting at factor cost is only related with the indirect taxes. Subsidies and national income similar to the indirect taxes, the various subsidies which are forwarded by the governments need to be adjusted while calculating national income. They are added to the national income at market cost, in case of India 9. Subsidies are added in the national income at the market cost to derive the national income at factor cost. This is because the price at which the subsidized goods and services are made available by the governments are not their real factor costs. Subsidies are forwarded on the factor costs of the goods and services, otherwise we will have a distorted value, which will be less than its real value. Thus the formula will be, national income at factor cost is equal to NNP at market cost plus subsidies. If the national income is derived at the market cost and governments forward no subsidies, there is no need to adjustments for the subsidies. But after all, there is not a single economy in the world today which does not forward subsidies in one or the other form. Putting indirect taxes and the subsidies both together, India's national income will be derived with the following formula. As India does it at the factor cost, national income at factor cost is equal to NNP at market cost indirect taxes plus subsidies. Indian economy did show some traits 10 which were unique. The contribution of the primary sector in its GDP has fallen down regularly and today it stands at 14.1%, which is sufficient to conclude that it is no more an agrarian economy. 2. The share of its tertiary sector increased to over 67.5% in its GDP by 2001-13. This proves India is a service economy. 3. The dependency of population on the primary sector for its employment still remains at over 56.8%, a symptom of an agrarian economy. The expansion of the industries was not sufficient to attract the labor force from the primary activity. VWNWD.EIACESNGS in PELR linalga.ng on this.
Front Valley.
Waste. TR. 4. The share of the secondary sector in its GDP is at 27% and never crossed 40%. India has been basically the first case which directly had either over 50% of its GDP coming from the primary sector or the tertiary sector, an agrarian economy shifting directly to the service economy, at least partially, if we forget the dependency ratio of the population on the sectors. It means India jumped the stage of being a fully developed industrial economy. Without fully realizing the industrial and manufacturing potential and directly merging into a service economy, has created tougher macro and micro challenges for policy makers in India. 1A Samuelson, P.A. and Nordois, W.D., Economics, Tata McGraw-Hill Pub. Company Limited, N. Delhi, 2005, P.4. 1B Stiglitz, J.E. and Walsh, C. Economics, W.W. Norton and Company, New York, 2006.
Process, progress, growth and development. Since 1971, Bhutan has rejected GDP as only way to measure the progress in its place. It has championed a new approach, to development, which measure prosperity through the formal principle of gross national happiness (GNH) and spiritual, physical, social and environmental health of its citizen and natural environment. For decades, this belief that wavering should take preference over the material growth as equal oddity. Now it is world resets by collapsing financial system, gross inequality and wide-scale environment destruction. And this tiny Buddhist state approach is attracting a lot of interest. In 2011, UN adopted Bhutan call for a holistic approach to development, a move endorsed by 68 countries. A UN panel is now considering that Bhutan GNS model can be replicated across the globe. This is progress, economic growth, economic development.
Progress. Economic development waste.
TR for a comparatively longer period of time.
Progress is a general term
frequently used by experts to denote betterment or improvement in anything. In economics, the term was used for a long period to show the positive movement in the lives of people and an economy. It had both quantitative and qualitative aspects to it. After a point of time, some economists started using all the three terms, progress, growth and development, interchangeably to mean almost the same thing. But it was only during the 3 decades of 1960s, 1970s and 1980s that the clear meanings we attach to these terms today really evolved. One, the term progress became a general term with no specific meaning in economics or denoting both growth and development. But growth and development were allotted their clear-cut meanings. Economic growth, a term coming from the life sciences, growth in economics means economic growth. An increase in the economic variables over a period of time is economic growth. The term can be used in an individual case or in the case of an economy or for the whole world. The most important aspect of growth is its quantifiability, i.e. one can measure it in absolute terms. To all the units of measurement may be applied to show it, depending upon the economic variable where the growth is being studied. We have a few examples. An economy might have been able to see growth in its food production during a decade which could be measured in tons. 2. Road network growth of an economy might be measured for a decade or any period in miles or kilometers. 3. Similarly, the value of the total production of an economy might be measured in currency terms, which means the economy is growing. 4. Per capita income for an economy might be measured in monetary terms over a period. We may say that economic growth is a quantitative progress. To calculate the growth rate of an economic variable, the difference between the concerned period is converted into percentage form. For example, if a dairy farm owner produced 100 liters of milk last month and 105 liters in the following month, his dairy has a growth rate of 5%. Similarly, we may calculate the growth rate of an economy for any given successive periods. Growth rate is an annual concept which may be used otherwise with the clear reference to the period for which it is used. Though growth is a value-neutral term, i.e. it might be positive or negative for an economy for a period, we generally use it in the positive sense. If economists say an economy is growing, it means the economy is having a positive growth, otherwise they use the term negative growth. Economic growth is a widely used term in economics which is useful in not only national level economic analysis and policy making but also highly useful in the study of comparative economics. International level financial and commercial institutions go for policy making and future financial planning on the basis of the growth rate data available for the Economics ISTS, WFWT.HEESYWNOGR in ledger.ing netwist, TR progress.
Economic development waste. TR for a comparatively longer period of time.
After the birth of economics, economists remained focused on the aspects of expanding the quantity of production and income of a country's economy. The main issue economists discussed was how to increase the quantity of production and income of a kingdom or a nation-state. It was believed that once an economy is able to increase its production, its income will also increase and there will be an automatic betterment, quality increase, in the lives of the people of the economy. There was no conscious discussion over the issue of quality expansion in the people's lives. Economic growth was considered as a cause and effect for the betterment of lives of the people. This was the reason why economists till the 1950s failed to distinguish between growth and development, though they knew the difference between these terms. It was during 1960s and in the later decades that economists came across many countries where the growth was comparatively higher but the quality of life was comparatively lower. The time had come to define economic development differently from what the world meant by economic growth. For economists, development indicates the quality of life in the economy, which might be seen in accordance with the availability of so many variables such as I. The level of nutrition. 2. The expansion and the reach of healthcare facilities, hospitals, medicines, safe drinking water, vaccination, sanitation, etc. 3. The level of education among the people. 4. There might be many more variables on which the quality of life depends. Here, one basic thing must be kept in mind, that if the masses are to be guaranteed with the basic minimum level of quality-enhancing inputs, above given variables such as food, health, education, etc., in their life, a minimum level of income has to be guaranteed for them. Income is generated from productive activities. It means that before assuring development we need to assure growth. Higher economic development requires higher economic growth. But it does not mean that a higher economic growth automatically brings in higher economic development, a confusion the early economists failed to clear. We may cite an example to understand the confusion. Two families having same levels of income but spending differing amounts of money on the developmental aspects. One might be giving little attention to health, education and going for saving, and the other might not be saving but taking possible care of the issues of health and education. Here the latter necessarily will have higher development in comparison to the former. Thus, we may have some diverse cases of growth and development, I. Higher growth and higher development, 2. Higher growth but lower development, 3. Lower growth but higher development. Above given combinations, though comparative in nature, make one thing clear, that, just as for higher income and growth we need conscious efforts, same is true about the economic development and higher economic development. Without a conscious public policy, development has not been possible.
Anywhere in the world. Similarly, VVCESATI,
NWWSYHENGTINPI growth, there cannot be development either. The first such instance of growth without development, which the economists saw, was in the Gulf countries. These economies, though they had far higher levels of income and growth, the levels of development there were not of comparable levels. Here then started the branch of economics which will be known as development economics. After the arrival of the WB and the IMF, conscious economic policies were framed and prescribed for the growth and development of the less developed economies. We can say that economic development is quantitative as well as qualitative progress in an economy. 3. It means, when we use the term growth we mean quantitative progress, and when we use the term development we mean quantitative as well as qualitative progress. If economic growth is suitably used for development, it comes back to accelerate the growth and ultimately greater and greater population brought under the arena of development. Similarly, high growth with low development and ill-care development finally results into fall in growth. Thus, there is a circular relationship between growth and development. This circular relationship broke down when the Great Depression occurred. Once the concept of the welfare state got established, development became a highly coveted and serious matter of concern for the governments of the world, policy makers and economists alike. A whole new branch of economics, welfare economics, has its origin in the concept of welfare state and the immediacy of development. Measuring development, although economists were able to articulate the differences between growth and development, Mahbub-ul-Haq, a leading Pakistani economist, had done it by early 1970s itself. It took some more time when the right method of measuring development could be developed. It was an established fact that the goal of progress goes beyond mere income increase. International bodies such as the UNO, IMF and WB all were concerned about the development of the comparatively underdeveloped regions of the world. But any attempt in this direction was only possible once there was a tool to know and measure the developmental level of an economy and the determinants which could be considered the traits of development. The idea of developing a formula method to measure the development was basically facing two kinds of difficulties. At one level it was difficult to define as to what constitutes development. Factors which could show development might be many, such as level of income, consumption, quality of consumption, healthcare, nutrition, safe drinking water, literacy and education, social security, peaceful community life, availability of social prestige, entertainment, pollution-free environment, etc. It has been a real difficult task to achieve consensus among the experts on these determinants of the development. 2. At the second level it looked highly difficult to quantify a concept, as development constitutes quantitative as well as qualitative aspects. It is easy to compare qualitative aspects such as beauty, taste, etc., but to measure them we don't have any measuring scale. Human Development Index. The dilemma was solved once the UNFTIST, WNWTIONSY array in LGO.NPET program, UNDP, published its first Human Development Report, HDR, in 1990. The report had a Human Development Index, HDI, which was the first attempt to define and measure the levels of development. The index was a product of selected team of leading scholars, development practitioners and members of the Human Development Report Office of the UNDP. The first such team which developed the HDI was led by Mubabul Haq and Inj Kaul. The term, human development, is a corollary of development in the index. The HDI went on to select three broad parameters and allotted them an equal weightage on the scale of 1 and measured the development of the countries included in the report. The three parameters for are as given below. Standard of living, to be indicated by the real per capita income adjusted for the differing purchasing power parity, PPP. 2. Knowledge, to be measured by indicators related to the level of education, educational attainment among the adults, given 2/3 weightage. B. School enrollment, given 1/3 weightage. 3. Life expectancy, to be calculated at the time of birth. The UNDP ranked 5 the economies in accordance of their achievements on the above given three parameters on the scale of 1, i.e. 0.000, 1.000. As per their achievements, the countries were broadly classified into three categories with a range of points on the index. High human development countries, 0.800 1.000 points on the index. 2. Medium human development countries, 0.500 0.799 points on the index. 3. Low human development countries, 0.000 0.499 points on the index. The Human Development Report, 2013 is discussed in Chapter 22. Together with India's related position in the world. The debate continues, though the UNDP Commission team had evolved a consensus as to what constitutes development. Academicians and experts around the world have been debating this issue. By 1995, the economies around the world had officially accepted the concept of human development propounded by the UNDP. Basically, the UNDP-designed HDR was used by the World Bank since 1990s to quantify the developmental efforts of the member countries, and chief developmental funds were allocated in accordance. Naturally, the member countries started emphasizing on the parameters of income, education and life expectancy in their policy making, and in this way the idea of HDI got obligatory or voluntary acceptance around the world. For many years, experts and scholars came up with their own versions of defining development. They gave unequal weightage to the determinants defining development, as well as selected some completely different parameters which could also denote development in a more suitable way according to them. Since quality is a matter of value judgment and a normative concept, such scopes were there. Most of such attempts were not prescriptions for an alternative development index, but they were basically trying to show the incompleteness of the HDI, via intellectual satires. One such
Attempt by the Economists and with STC, HOWLW.E rupees ASIOEFNG TINAEL School of Economics in 1999, which concluded Bangladesh as the most developed country in the world, with the USA, Norway, Sweden getting one of the lowest ranks in the index. Basically, it is very much possible to come out with such an index. As for example, we may say that peace of mind is a necessary element of development and betterment in human life, which depends heavily on the fact as to how much sleep we get every day. House theft and burglary are major determinants of a good night's sleep, which in turn depends on the fact as how assured we go to sleep in our homes at night from burglars and thieves. It means we may try to know a good sleep by the data of thefts and burglaries in homes. Since minor housing thefts and burglaries are underreported in police stations, the surveyor, suppose, tried to know such cases with data as how much locks were sold in the country in a particular year. In this way, a country where people hardly have anything to be stolen or no risk of being burgled might be considered having the best sleep in night, thus the best peace of mind, and that is why this will be the most developed country. Basically, the HDI could be considered as one possible way of measuring development, which was evolved by the concerned group of experts with the maximum degree of consensus. But the index which calculates the development of economies on certain parameters might be overlooking many other important factors which affect the development of an economy and standard of living. As per experts, such other determinants affecting our living conditions might be I. Cultural aspects of the economy, 2. Outlook towards the aesthetics and purity of the environment, 3. Aspects related to the rule and administration in the economy, 4. People's idea of happiness and prestige, and we. Ethical dimension of human life, etc. Introspecting development. 6. Confusion about the real meaning of development did start only after the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund came into being, i.e. post-war. As experts were studying the development process of the developing world, they were also surveying the performance reports of the developed world. As the Western world had been declared the developed countries having top 20 ranks on the HDI, social scientists started evaluating the conditions of life in these economies. Most of such studies concluded that life in the developed world is everything but happy. Crime, corruption, burglaries, extortion, drug trafficking, flesh trade, rape, homicide, moral degradation, sexual perversion, etc. All kinds of the so-called vices were thriving in the developed world. It means development had failed to deliver them happiness, peace of mind, a general well-being, and a feeling of being in good state. Scholars started questioning the very efforts being made for development around the world. Most of them have suggested a redefining of development which could deliver happiness to mankind. Why development has not delivered happiness to the developed world? The answer to this question does not lie in any one objective fact but touches so many areas of human life. First, whenever economists from the outset talked about progress, they meant overall happiness of human life. Social scientists somehow have been using terms such as progress, growth, development, being, welfare as synonyms of happiness. STS, W.
WHWA.EP as PN Nagis NSEI is NG. An ethnonormative concept as well as a state of mind. Therefore its idea might vary from one economy to the other. Second, the period in which development was defined, it was considered that with the supply of some selected material resources, human life can be improved. These resources were pinpointed as a better level of income, proper level of nutrition, healthcare facilities, proper levels of literacy and education, etc. Happiness is a broader thing than development. The so-called development, for which the world has been striving hard for last many decades, is capable of delivering material happiness to mankind. Happiness has its non-material side also. It means while the world has been trying to maximize its developmental prospects, i.e. material happiness, it could not attain the non-material part of happiness. The non-material part of our life is rooted in ethics, religion, spiritualism and cultural values. As development or human development was defined in material terms, it could only deliver us material happiness which is visibly available in the developed world. Due to partial definition of development, the developed world has been able to achieve development, i.e. happiness, but only of material kind, and for the non-material part of happiness we naturally need to redefine our idea of development today or tomorrow. Somehow a very small kingdom has been able to define development in its own way, which included material as well as non-material aspects of life into it, and named it the Gross National Happiness, GNH. It was Bhutan. Gross National Happiness Bhutan, a small Himalayan kingdom and an economic non-entity, developed a new concept of development in early 1970s, the Gross National Happiness, GNH. Without rejecting the idea of human development propounded by the UNDP, the kingdom has been officially following the targets set by the GNH. Bhutan has been following up the GNH since 1972, which has the following parameters to attain happiness: development, I. Higher real per capita income. 2. Good governance. 3. Environmental protection. 4. Cultural promotion, i.e. inculcation of ethical and spiritual values in life, without which, it says, progress may become a curse rather than a blessing. At the level of real per capita income, the GNH and the HDI are the same. Though the HDI is silent on the issue of good governance, today it should be considered as being promoted around the world once the World Bank came with its report on it in 1995 and enforced it upon the member states. On the issue of protecting environment, though the HDI didn't say anything directly, the World Bank and the UNO had already accepted the immediacy of sustainable development by then, and by early 1990s there was a separate UN convention on the matter. Follow-up on this convention has been really very low till date, which is a different issue. It means the basic difference between the GNH and the HDI looks at the level of assimilating the ethical and spiritual aspects into our UNDP's idea of development. An impartial analysis sufficiently suggests that material achievements are unable to deliver us happiness devoid of some ethics at its base. And ethics are rooted in the religious and spiritual texts. But the new world is guided by its own scientific and secular interpretation of life, and the world has
always been suspicious
about recognizwi in ISCT, twhwau.sep as a re-into gea nela fingc.n to enter in the human life. Rather, the Western idea of secularism was defined after rejecting the very existence of anything like God, and also rejecting the whole traditional hypothesis of spiritualism as instances of ignorance and orthodoxy. And there should not be any doubt in accepting it that the Western ideology in the name of development has ultimately dominated the modern world and its way of life. The idea of development, which was followed by the larger part of the world, has been %, this worldly. And anybody can assess today what kind of happiness the world has been able to have for itself at the end. A recent study by a senior economist from the UNDP on the Bhutanese development experience under the GNH has vindicated the idea of gross happiness which development must result into. As per the study, the period 1984-98 has been spectacular in terms of development, with life expectancy increasing by a hopping 19 years, gross school enrollment reaching 72% and literacy touching 47.5%, from just 17%, 7. After the terror attack on the World Trade Center in the USA, the whole world has gone for a psychic metamorphosis, and at least euphoria of development from this world to that world has been shaken from its very base. The world, which is in the process of globalization, at one hand has started introspecting whether multicultural coexistence is possible. The Human Development Report of 2005 was titled as Multicultural Coexistence. We may conclude that mankind is passing through a phase of serious introspection and transition, where the dominant view in the world may metamorphose into redefining the very idea of development by including ethical values and spiritualism as important parts. But till now the proponents of development look shy in believing and accepting that there exists a non-material part of life too, which needs to be realized to make our development result into happiness. One based on the analysis in Michael P. Todorov and Stephen C. Smith,
Diverse opinions
were there about the real meaning of development. By mid-1940s up to almost the whole 1950s it meant 5-7% growth rate in an economy, even by the IMF and WB. By the late 1960s new views of development started emerging. Arthur Lewis had seen development in the sense of human freedom in 1963 itself when he concluded that the advantage of economic growth is not that wealth increases happiness, but that it increases the range of human choice. For him development means a freedom from servitude. Mankind could be free to have choices to lead a life full of material goods or in spiritual contemplation. W. Arthur Lewis, The Theory of Economic Growth, Allen and Unbean, London, 1963, p. 420. For Dudley Sears development meant more employment and equality besides a falling poverty. The Meaning of Development, a paper presented at the 11th World Conference of the Society for International Development, N. Delhi, 1969, p. 3. Dudley Sears was later supported by many other economists such as Dennis Gollett. The Cruel Choice, a new concept in the theory of development, Atheneum, New York, 1971, p. 23, Richard Brinkman, 1995, P. Jagdish Gandhi, 1996, and many others. The International Labour Organization, ILO, had also articulated by the mid-1970s that economic development must be able to deliver the economic ability that people can meet their basic needs, the concept of sustenance, besides the elimination of
absolute poverty,
creating more employment. AVNID Cent L, ASSWAUNI.NEG ACNACNOM ties, employment, growth and basic needs, ILO, Geneva, 1976.
Amartya Sen articulated
a similar view via his ideas of capabilities and entitlements, development, which way now, Economic Journal 93, December 1983, pp 754757. By 1994, the United Nations looked to including the element of capabilities in its idea of development when it concludes that human beings are born with certain potential capabilities and the purpose of development is to create an environment in which all people can expand their capabilities in present times and in future. Wealth is important for human life, but to concentrate exclusively on it is wrong for two reasons. First, accumulating wealth is not necessary for the fulfillment of some important human choices. Second, human choices extend far beyond economic well-being. Human Development Report 1994, UNDP, Oxford University Press, New York, 1994, pp 13-15. The World Bank by 1991 had also changed its view about development and had concluded that improving quality of life is time. The WB had already included education, health, nutrition, less poverty, cleaner environment, equality, greater freedom and richer cultural life as the goals of development. Amartya Sen, a leading thinker on the meaning of development, attracted attention for articulating human goals of development. He opined that enhancing the lives and the freedoms we enjoy should be the concerns of development known as the capabilities approach to development. See his Commodities and Capabilities, North Holland, Amsterdam, 1985 and Development as Freedom. Alfred Knopf, New York, 1999. 7. Stefan Friesner, a senior economist with the UNDP, conducted the study for the Johns Hopkins University, USA, in 2005.
Wist, TR Wist, TR.
The